We're all looking at the same thing. Thank you for joining us for another perspective from the Sag Nasty If Anybody Asks Me podcast. Don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment. For more videos, please subscribe to the channel. Or don't. Just sit back, say nothing, do nothing, and watch as we bare our souls to you. We got it from here. Sag Nasty.
Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, of course.
Because of that song, he decided to go to Saginaw, Michigan. Away. So my mother and father had me, and then they got divorced when I was in third grade. They separated in third. My dad remarried in fifth grade, but so they had me.
Do you know how your dad ended up in Saginaw?
So my dad's from South Dakota, Pierre, South Dakota, which is the capital. It's right in the middle of the state. And my dad is the son of Cliff and Juanita. He has an older sister and a younger sister, Charlene and Angela. And Angela, the youngest sister, actually went and she is a professor at Idaho University, and Washington, or is it Washington State? I can't remember. But she moved away. Charlene still lives in South Dakota with my cousin Lindsay and their 4 children. My grandfather Clifford passed away. What was it? Almost 4 years ago. My grandmother Juanita is still alive at 91. So, anyways, my father is from from Pierce, South Dakota. Played college football at Yankton College, a very small college. Actually, I have that Lyle Izado jersey because Lyle Izado, who played for the Raiders for many years, was one of the first football players I knew of because he graduated from Yankton College when he got drafted, and my dad filled his spot at defensive end at Yankton College.
Oh, cool! Is that South Dakota's school?
It is. It's now shut down. It's not open anymore. I think it's a prison now. Damn. But he was inducted to the Yankton Hall of Fame at defensive end. So then what he did was he worked at a mental hospital in this one off season or whatever. You know, like an actual, like back in the day, like the orderlies that come in with the white outfits. You know what I mean? To restrain some of the the people.
Gotham asylum.
So he got in. He was into social work. And there was a he loved country, right? And there was a country song by Lefty Frizzell named Saginaw, Michigan. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, of course. If you're going to Saginaw, Michigan.
Because of that song, he decided to go to Saginaw, Michigan. Didn't know anyone, not at all. But I want to say, did he drive? I think he had a vehicle, and then he drove into. I think he looked up like there was a job for some type of counselor in a home that were meant for disabled, handicapped people. Like he kind of it was like a resource center where handicapped people could go and kind of get support and this and that. And my mom worked there.
Wow.
So that's actually where they met, right? So you remember like Royina?
Just barely. I know the name better than anything.
Sometimes you'd come to my house and my mom would have this, and she'd bring some of the clients over, and you're who are these? They're great people, but they were just they were mentally handicapped and stuff. So, so my father actually, when he moved into town, he didn't have anywhere. He actually stayed at the YMCA when you could rent a room at the YMCA. Remember, that the YMCA, and he didn't have barely any money. And everything he owned was in his car, and it got, after like a couple of days there, it got broken into and everything got stolen from the parking lot. So they ended up meeting and getting married, and I think they got married in 1980. And then shortly after had me, and then they got divorced. My father, I remember my dad going, so he started off, I think he started off in the jail at Saginaw County there as like a parole, like helped guys with parole.
Parole officer. Yeah.
Yeah, he was at like administration. He didn't have anything to do with as far as like being an actual cop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I remember he went back and got his, so he was at the sheriff department, and then he owned Owen Town Gym and Equipment, which he opened up in like, I think 79 before they had.
Okay.
And it used to be, you ever see, you know, the McDonald's there on West Michigan, kind of by, there's the rallies there. There's at McDonald's, the Junction. And then there was this old building called where Barrett Signs is. And it was like a 2-story. That's where his original gym used to be. Yep. So he had that. And I remember he was going back to Michigan State to get his master's degree. And then he actually went to the police academy and got like his certification. And that's when he became like a head in the jail there, like actual, you know, with the badge and that type of stuff.
Excuse my French, but your dad is badass.
Yeah, I mean, he's big Stu, man, you know. And I remember he used to come home, and one of the reasons he actually he got in there was because you know, back then the jails there wasn't so many regulations, you know. And if an inmate challenged you, you know, you guys would fight. It would be like a fight. I didn't like to fight, you know. And so that was one of the main, because he heard that jail was pretty rough and you could get in some fights. And my dad, you know, he enjoyed fighting. But I remember he'd come home and his knuckles would be split open. I'm like, Dad, what happened? He said, well, someone tried to shank me today, Stu. And but he would take me up there, and all of the inmates, Mr. Stu, you know, they all had a ton of respect for him. And I remember that. I remember my dad, hey, this is, you know, and he knew everybody, and I'm thinking like, you know, I'm going up, and, you know, these guys are in cells, you know? So, I mean, it was like, these guys are like, you know, I'm scared, because you think of guys in jail, they're really bad
and
people.
You were young. You were really young.
I was young, yeah. And I just remember everyone, I'm like, they're laughing with each other, and, you know, hey, Mr. Schwaggart, this, and then, oh, this is little Stu, and oh, hey, little Stu, we heard about you, and
it's almost like uncles.
Don't end up in here like me, you know, and this and that. And as I grew up, they would have newspaper clippings of me in there. But I remember my father saying, you know, Stu, these people are in jail, and some of these people are very dangerous. But he said, it doesn't mean they're bad people. He said, I don't care if it's, you know, one of the worst inmates in there or the janitor, up to the, you know, the actual sheriff who was my dad's boss. You treat everybody with respect. You know, and if that person hasn't done anything to you and you have no reason to be upset with that person, you don't have a right to judge them just because they're in here. You know, you don't understand why they're in here, what the situation was. So there's no reason to look down on somebody before you get a chance to meet them. And what was unique was about Old Town Gym and Equipment, which you remember, right? It wasn't,
of course.
It wasn't, I mean, we grew up in there. It wasn't these, you know, Four Flag, or it wasn't, you know, 24-hour fitness, or it wasn't Planet Fitness. It was, you know, my dad made equipment, right? So a lot of the equipment didn't match, you know, he built a lot of it, and it was power lifters. And it was half the, you know, guys that were in the gym, most of them knew my dad from serving time.
That makes sense, because they look like criminals. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And the other half were, you know, cops, sheriffs, you know, and I just remember being little and just seeing whites and blacks and Hispanics and gang members and doctors, and
very diverse. And
everyone in there was just, everyone was cool.
You're
you know, I never feared anybody. I never thought bad about somebody. I just thought that everybody got along. Everyone was in there working hard and, you know, trying to get stronger and better. And it was a really cool environment to grow up into, because the other thing was my dad was a big physical guy, right? You know what I mean? He could deadlift 760 pounds. And there's kind of a cool video I have on my YouTube channel where he was interviewed by one of the guy was George Atkinson, a Hall of Fame, a Raiders player, Raiders Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And then another guy, they just interviewed him about me, and I put the interview up. So it kind of shows my dad. So he was everyone knew Big Stu, right? I mean, they didn't mess with my dad. Is it
true that he has some kind of record for deadlifting?
So I know at one point he may have had the state record for like 30 or 35-year-old and up, and it was like 760 pounds.
That's what I remember when I was young. He like said.
But I remember